The bell curve of male suffering voices. The truth about men and the men who want to save them. A story has taken hold that young men, especially young white men, are being lured by the Pied Piper of the algorithm towards reactionary content and becoming radicalized into misogyny. Richard Reeves, President, the American Institute for Boys and Men. Stories are a funny thing. They can be incredibly powerful, and that's a good thing. Stories engage us in a way that helps ideas penetrate deeper into a human's thoughts and feelings. Researchers like Paul Zak have proven this through decades of research measuring brain activity, dopamine, and oxytocin. But stories can also be an effective tool for peddling untruths. As Reeves writes in his December 9 Substack article, Boys and Men Online, Don't Panic, Do Care. As Reeves writes, the idea that the manosphere is radicalizing young men is not true. Or at least, it is true of only a small minority of young men. The views of young men have not become noticeably more conservative in recent years, including on gender issues. How does that sit with you? Does it challenge a narrative you've come to believe? I have been studying storytelling for more than a decade. I have been especially interested in the stories written about men, women, and gender. On one end of the spectrum are storytellers promoting misogynistic acts and words. Some see certain jobs as male or female or label universal human behaviors as gynocentric. On the opposite end are voices who frequently bash the male species as immature, uncaring, sexual deviants. These voices often praise virtuous human behaviors as inherently female, portraying men as beasts who need to be tamed. None of this is true. And scientists have demonstrated that truth for decades. They just don't have a way with words and storytelling like popular book authors and influencers. For example, science has proven that humans with a high level of testosterone are more likely to convert human anger into violence. Testosterone interacts in real time with human nature to modulate our reactions to social and status-related threats. Thus, a man with a high level of testosterone who's also socialized to interpret situations as competitive or threatening may show more anger responses in certain situations. But similar to what Reeves says in his essay, let's look at what the data actually shows us about the majority and minority of men. One well-cited study found that male testosterone levels for non-obese men fell along a distribution curve that looks something like this chart. These results indicate that 2.5 to 8% of men 19 to 39 years old, that's the far right of the curves, have what would be considered high testosterone levels. Let's say a man in that minority was socialized from an early childhood to express a full range of emotions. This man actually might be less likely to perform violence than, say, a man with lower relative testosterone levels, but who was raised in an angry household and has poor emotional regulation. Further up and to the left on the bell curve. All of this is important to our discussion of men, masculinity, and the influencers currently talking about men. Broad stroke phrases and concepts about men might make for best-selling books, talk show invitations, and viral TikTok videos, but they also could be misleading and damaging to the endeavor of helping men flourish. Creating men on the curve. This is why I'm writing this series, Listening to the Voices on the Bell Curve of Male Suffering. Just like men have higher and lower levels of testosterone, examining the public figures talking about men helps us dig down to the truth of male biology, sociology, and the men attracted to different concepts and messages. This understanding can help us improve both what we say and how we say it to obtain optimal results. I have seen this dynamic repeatedly on Substack and have often written about it. Most recently, I saw this play out in two very thoughtful responses to my opening bell curve salvo, Who's Giving Voice to Male Suffering. The Long Brown Path commented about evolutionary differences in male and female reproductive strategies, leading to men being more aggressive risk takers and women more conservative. To be sure, these would be theories about averages, not statements about individuals. And obviously, plenty of men and women today taking on roles that are different from what might have been the case in our evolutionary past. He gave an example of a young woman he met at the U.S. Army's Ranger School at Fort Benning, someone we might assume has more traditional masculine evolutionary genetics. And there are men who would rather stay at home and take care of the kids, all of which is great. But it seems to me that some of the male suffering today relates to the inability in modern society for certain men to find roles that are energizing or meaningful enough for them. Isn't that sort of the Galloway-Peterson axis? It sort of begs the question, to what extent are genetic inclinations, aspects of masculine personality suited to life in the forest, still present in our personalities? And if these traits are still there, how do we manage them? I don't have a precise answer to the Long Brown Path's question, though I lean in this direction. Just as the environment shaped human bodies and brains thousands of years ago when we were hunters and gatherers, today's environment is reshaping those same human behaviors and biology. Humans are adaptive. What the Long Brown Path may be pointing us towards is that the way men are raised and the opportunities afforded today to men to flourish hasn't caught up with how our biology has been adapting to a declining hunter-gatherer survival model. I would place influencers most inclined to agree with that theory at the top of the bell curve. They try to objectively view the impact of nature and nurture and are focused more on promoting flourishing in society than protecting human-made concepts like masculinity and femininity. One of my most treasured readers, Damon Mitchell, also added his voice to this discussion. Damon was wondering whether the theories of researchers like Dr. Ron Levant might be pathologizing aspects of masculinity with notions like normative male alexithymia. He also wrote, I'm also not convinced that all men need to come into deep contact with their emotions for us to worry less about men. Some of us are fine with not engaging our emotions. I'm not that person, but I also don't need the world to validate my way of being. Damon touches on so many important concepts here. P.S. I highly recommend you're subscribing to his Substack, Tolerance of Men, for his exploration of masculinity. Let me focus now only on two of the concepts Damon touches on, which I believe are deeply intertwined. Pathology. I'm not sure that Dr. Levant is pathologizing some of the male experience, but the fact that some men might view his research and theory this way is critically important to our helping men flourish. Some men might be turned off to self-improvement if what they hear is, people think I have a disorder. Coming into deep contact with our emotions. This is trickier to both measure and manage, and I will try to get into it more deeply in this series. For now, let's leave it at this: another distribution curve. As Damon points out, some people are capable of getting beneath "I'm mad" or "I'm sad" and leveraging their knowledge about their emotions to improve their lives. Others live completely happy lives, never digging below surface emotions. And somewhere in the middle, people need a little bit of both. I have not plotted this distribution curve. Personally, I believe an examined interior life can eventually lead to a better exterior life. Over the next few months, I'm going to examine a host of celebrities, influencers, and researchers on our bell curve of masculinity beliefs and messages. We'll look at how they represent different views of men, who tends to be attracted to their messages, and how these voices contribute and or detract from the endeavor of helping men live better lives. Please, please, please consider commenting. Join the conversation. Don't leave it to those with the most money and connections. Share this discussion with the men and women in your life and start your own conversations. And feel free to tag me to those conversations to pull me in. Our society does face a crisis of some men suffering. If you've come this far with me, I know you care as much as I do about changing that. Thanks in advance.